Hello everyone. So we're here today to talk about little sprinkles of interactivity and decoupling. So we've heard a lot about some thoughts about decoupling this day. I'm glad because I think that the idea has been there, for a long time already, but it's really catching on, and I think we're in a stage where that it's going full circle. Now we're talking about how do we bring it all back together again. So for the record, Robert and I were fully decoupled. We're not even a couple in the first place, but I'm not talking about decoupling ourselves. We're talking about decoupling applications, websites specifically. So in simple terms, we have, as developers, I think we have this problem of naming things. We call this JavaScript apps, JavaScript components, widgets. But I think this year we like to call it progressively decoupling a website. So we'll try for these 10 minutes to squeeze in as much as we can. And we'll start off with a quick introduction, which I feel is almost unnecessary. Like we throughout the day, from design to just now we're talking about monolith and microservices, and those are just kind of like sharing the same thoughts of how do we split the load between developers, how do we ensure there's this separation of concerns, right? Which has always been a very tough problem. So I remember when I was starting out as a developer, I wanted to be purely a backend developer, mainly because of my fear of having to work with issues about Internet Explorer, right? But that wouldn't take me long in my career, so I had to adapt. So it would have been good if there was decoupling during that time, but now that decoupling is here, I think there's a lot of advantages that we get to enjoy. So I'm not gonna go and give you the definition of what decoupling is about. Rather, why do we need it, or when should we consider using it? One of the things that I would like to think about when considering decoupling is how big is your team? What are your scalability and flexibility requirements? What are your audience? What are your different clients? Are you going to distribute your content in different devices, different destinations, kiosks, apps, websites? So we're also in a very good stage now because Drupal has evolved and now it's become this API first. So it's no longer a CMS, rather I would call it a content framework system. So with this API first design, I think it already took this step above the rest of the other CMSs out there, making sure that content can be distributed easily. Alright, so it all started with everything being monolith. And then we thought about decoupling, separating concerns. What exactly is a fully decoupled website? What are the traits in there? So it offers flexibility, scalability, as I mentioned, and enhance interactivity, because you can really free up your creative thinking, your front-end developers to do what they want with the tools that they are very familiar with. But there are some disadvantages to a fully decoupled Drupal. Some of, as fun as it seems as a developer to use it, it just really might be overkill for your project, for your website. So maybe what you really need is something in between, a balance, right, of interactivity and maintaining or rather retaining the good bits of Drupal, and that's where progressively decoupled website comes in. I find that this is really a good balance if you need the advanced content modeling experience that Drupal brings, being able to do revisioning, being able to do workflows. In a fully decoupled Drupal, these things you will have to re-implement it in a very intelligent way, which is very possible but may not be necessary. So, in summary, in a fully decoupled Drupal, Drupal is used as a content service, and front end is built elsewhere. So I like that term, built elsewhere, because it really shows just how flexible Drupal can be and how extendable it can be. But a number of out-of-the-box features will not be available, and you have to re-implement them. In a progressive Drupal setup, you can retain and leverage all those wonderful Drupal built-in features that we've loved to come to know and enjoy. But certain aspects of the site can still be be developed creatively. The downside to this is that developers will need to know a bit of both, know a bit of front end, maybe dive their toes into Drupal a bit. And so we have here some examples where we actually played around with the idea of progressively decoupling a site. One of them being McGill, where we implemented a number of tools using multiple React applications. And we have Princeton International, where we developed a React app that uses JSON API to get the data. And we have Premier Tech, where we created this interactive tool that uses React and also uses Free.js to provide you with this really interactive calculator. So in the next section, Robert will be going through concise and repeatable steps so that anyone can follow how to progressively decouple your Drupal sites, even newcomers.
Thank you, Dan. Hi. So in the upcoming section, I will talk about how to build and to integrate a JS component into Drupal. So the idea is that we want to build a smart, more interactive widget component outside of Drupal and then bring it into Drupal, make it work properly without any trouble. So we will go through the demo first, because 10 minutes is not enough for Don to explain what he have done in the project that he has just presented. It's just so complicated. So when we prepare for this session, we decide to build a very small demo and to demonstrate on the process to build the component in React and then import it into Drupal. So let me go to here. Where's my mouse? Okay, so everything starts with the open data from the city of Montreal. I found a data set, which is the station, the parking station, which is free, or you need to pay for it during the snow removal. So it's provide a JSON API and GeoJSON file. And what I want to do is to build a React component to visualize that. So this is create a React application, very simple. We have the map built with Mapbox, and in this application we choose it because there are two layers. The first layer is on the neighbor of Montreal, which come from one data set. The second data set is the one that you see on the other side. We'll visualize on the spot here. Those are the parking slot that we can find during the snow removal. So you can see, okay, we can park on here for free from this time to that time. This is not applicable for this year. This is for last year. So, and in the end, at the end, we have set up a site, a Drupal site. You can see that we go with the bare minimum. We don't even change the site name here. So, and we import the whole component into Drupal site here, and it's still working fine. And we can see there is a glitch here, which we will explain later. So this is about the project. This is about the demo. And let's go back to this. Okay, so let's talk about the React application. So this is the structure of the React application, very standard one. And you can see that there is a build folder here. And this is what happened when we run the build command. It will compile on your custom logic on your component in here, generate the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in this build folder. And this is the asset that we will deploy on Netlify to serve as a static site. And the first step is to create the component, make sure that it's just working properly. The second part, we know that the React component will generate the CSS and the JavaScript. So we transfer it and we include it into Drupal. The best way to do it, just to do the library in Drupal. We declare the JavaScript, we declare the CSS, and then the next step will be to load that library into Drupal. So to load it, there are two ways. The first way is to include it into the render array, as you can see in here. So we basically we just need an empty div which is a mounting point. This is an entry point where you can put on your React component in there. And then we attach the front-end library, which is Montreal parking/app. We can even pass the data from Drupal into the app. Here we demonstrate passing the access token from Mapbox from Drupal configuration into the component. The second way to attach a library, as we all know, which is to use the twig templates, use the attach library function. The third point that we are talking about here is to pass data from Drupal into the component. So like I said, there are a few ways to do that. The easiest way to use the Drupal setting. The other way is to use the twig templates. We have the data attribute. That is good for the medium size of data to pass into the component. But if your component is so complex, like all the data from the parking slot, like the data set like that, the best way is to use the JSON API. Drupal is very powerful in the JSON API. We can one click to enable the endpoint. We can even enable the module name JSON API extra, I think, so that you can decide which resource to expose through the endpoint. So building a component, building Drupal website in this way, we are talking about a component-based development, which means we want to build a component that is self-contained, that is working well without anything else. So that leads us to the next topic, which is from contrib module from Drupal community, which oriented us into that direction. The first big module that we are talking about here is the UI pattern. So with UI pattern, we build component. We can reuse component. In order to create one pattern, we need to define one metadata file, twig template. It can be one, or it can be multiple if you have multiple variant on each component, and then the CSS and the JavaScript for that component. When it is defined, a pattern from UI pattern can be used directly as a layout for layout builder, or it can be used in the view display mode of the view, or you can use it with display suite. UI pattern is very big and very it well support. The ecosystem is rather complex, so we use it quite a lot in our project. The second option that we are talking about is the single directory component, which is the new initiative which will go into core into 10 or 11. It's have the very similar approach with the UI pattern, the similar structure. As you can see, we also need to define one metadata file, twig template, CSS. The difference is that the single directory component is rather new, and this means like it's not fully support for something like if you need to pre-process a pattern or something that might not be support yet. But we know that the developer are working closely with are talking with the UI pattern developer. So maybe at some point they will evolve, we will see. Yes. Yes. The third one that I'm talking about here is the component module. This is a very simple module that allows us to declare a component and insert the JavaScript into that component. This allows the JavaScript developer to build the component without knowing anything about Drupal. It's very easy to insert that component into Drupal. That concludes what we want to present today. So this means what we want to present is like this will allow us to develop more complex, more interactive component outside of Drupal in parallel with the backend development. And when we are satisfied with that, we just plug it in Drupal seamlessly. So, do you have any questions?
Et vous pouvez poser des questions en français à Robert aussi.
Oui. Bon, bonjour. S'il y a plusieurs applications React dans une même page, est-ce qu'il y a des concerns d'optimisation que ça utilise comme plusieurs fois? Ou est-ce que ça à prendre en compte if there's multiple React rendered applications on the same page?
Thank you.
It's a very interesting question. It really depends on how you would architecture your front end.
What's the question?
So the question is that if there are multiple React applications in one page, how should we handle that? There are two ways. You could split the application into smaller components, but with that, you need to make sure that you'll be able to pass data between them. So there are multiple ways that you could do that, such as using the different storage options that we have. We have local storage, session storage, cookie storage. You can even go, very native and use event bus system for those different components to communicate. The other thing is that you just take that whole chunk of that huge application with all the multiple components in them, and then just mount them in one div or one element.
I want to add one more thing, which is about optimizing things. So normally, in order to generate all the assets that will be used by Drupal like that, we will hook it into a CI system. So we run the building process, optimizing thing, and then we will load it into Drupal. So that happened before going into Drupal.